Hey guys, so just for anybody that's tuning into the recording, Jinx had just asked, how's it feeling with everything being so close to being ready after all the time? And so yeah, there was once we had seen that it was entirely in our control end to end, and that it was fully working, and that there was no identifiable vulnerabilities in the ecosystem front to back. That was, yeah, that was just so thrilled. I had a good 4-hour snooze that night. Yeah. Yeah, it's just so cool. Because, yeah, the ability for us to now scale the ecosystem to any blockchain. And, when Brendan just hopped on the call here now, so when Brendan and I go through specifically on the token contract side and how we've designed the token contract infrastructure in combination with the bridge, it not only allows us to go from where we are when we start on base and BSC to any new EVM, but what it also allows is for us to take the token network that we've established there and allow it to continue that multi-chain shared liquidity network everywhere that we go. We can continue pairing our own token pairs with each other. And to me, one of the coolest things about the token design is that anytime that the tokens sell off their token taxes, they actually end up selling off into their blockchain native pools and then using that ETH or BNB or whatever chain that it's on at the time to then buy back the Geeks tokens with its taxes and then distribute those Geeks tokens back to the treasury wallet. So what we've created from where we're sitting and from everything that we've looked at in DeFi, like the most connected kind of mother tree effect that you could get for a single token. And what we've also created on top of that, as you'll see with all of the other supplementary things, is all of the resource distribution mechanisms that we possibly could need with our NFTs that we have set up. With the Shilitary, what we've got is our own form of attention acquisition. We've got our own internal participation-based reward system and kind of like societal ranking system as well. And then the ability to distribute, ETH rewards. We can, decentralize the ecosystem further as we distribute the DeFi token rewards through folks. And so that's what we're going to get into as we go through this walkthrough. Yeah, it's all there. Like everything that we need to get this started, is really all there. And so I'm super stoked for it. Do you have anything to add in on that, Brennan? How are you feeling? You might not be able to talk at the moment. Tired but good. Yeah, big week. Okay, so before I get started, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I just have one, and it might just be a stupid question, but all questions are good questions, so I've been told. So here goes. Is it? You say you can sort of connect to any blockchain. Is there anything on a new blockchain side that can prevent you from connecting to any given blockchain, or it's just always open access, and if you want to connect to it, you just connect to it?
Yep, exactly that second part. Okay. They're all just there, and so these EVMs, because the smart contracts that we write are all EVM compatible. Any of the contracts that we have currently written are compatible to any Ethereum virtual machine that we want to go to. And so Base is EVM, BSC is EVM, ETH is EVM, I think Pulse is EVM, I think Matic is EVM. There's a whole bunch of them, and so our ability to scale out really does just depend on whatever chain that we decide that's EVM that we want to go to makes sense. And so the eventual way that we'll be doing this as well, for folks that aren't sure exactly what the mechanism will look like, is that we can create a new token contract on a new blockchain that has effectively no supply. We could mint just one Geeks token. So we've got 2 billion when we start. We can make a new Geeks contract on a new chain with no new minted tokens, or just one single minted token. and then take the ones that we have from BSC or Base and then bridge them over there, and then set up the liquidity environment and then have everything scale from there. So the plan is that other than the small inflation that comes from the, our miners that we have through those Tang NFTs, that's all the supply that we'll have. And so anytime that we want to go to new environments, we just take what we have and just migrate them there. And so, if folks were curious if we had wanted to, if there was the reason to do it and the motivation to do it, and we had wanted to scale it over there, we could have, do a small raise on the Geeks tokens that we have in the treasury, and then just have that environment set up on ETH, and then do a big ETH launch. It would take us a few minutes to get everything plugged together. But once we're live, that whole process, start to finish, just less than 20 minutes from when we had wanted to go front to back on it.
Would that just be to reach out to more people, like people that are focused on maybe other blockchains, or what would be the...
Yeah, so the ecosystem was designed to be blockchain agnostic. And so what I mean by that is that some people have, an allegiance to certain chains. Some people, aren't super comfortable with bridging away from ETH. Some people just love BSC. Some people heavily trade on Base. A lot of people are Sol maxis. Sol is in an EVM, so we won't go there. But, there's just a lot of places that there's different chain environments that kind of have their own kind of online clusters. And by being able to move to any new chain, it really does allow us to just have this full network. And with the way that the thing's set up with the bridge and everything else, is that it's all one entity. So none of the different liquidity pools that would be set up, or any of the tokens on any one particular chain, are going to be acting independently of the whole network. So it really is just one big network. And then we'll get into this once we get into the kind of end of phase one, like start of phase two stuff. But the whole purpose of this network is to have a stable liquidity base that we can then add in the more tokens to. So the big, kind of phase one, like I said, there's more stuff in phase two, phase three. I don't want to get into that stuff yet because it's pretty mind-bendy. But at the end of phase one, what we want is a multi-chain token launcher, where we as a community do, peer review on different ideas, where we say, okay, what idea do we want to launch? What idea do we want to tokenize? What do we want to support? And then that we as a community come to a consensus on that. And then, my role in this as well is just going to be educating community members, that by that time comes, like the community members could become developers, smart, like folks are already starting to learn how to deploy smart contracts. I think there's, I see Michael, Glitch, first two folks that I see that have already started deploying staking contracts. I mean, I think Michael and I shared 10 DMs before he was deploying staking contracts, and then Glitch and I got a little more into the weeds on it when it was going on there. But the barrier of entry to being able to, work as a community to build this, I think is pretty low. And so that's where we're going to be pushing this to in the kind of smaller time frame, is that okay, like these Geeks launches, anything that's happening within Geeks ecosystem, is going to be a quality launch. It's going to be a quality token that's supported by strong teams with like good morals and good ethics, and is a safe place to trade. And so one of the problems, if you want to call it a problem for a lot of DeFi investors, is like, where do I find the good tokens? Where do I find the good tokens? And the solution to that, this September, is going to be that you can find good tokens by searching Geeks in DEX tools. And every token that is paired with Geeks is a good token. There is a strong team behind it. There is a strong community behind it. The network is secure. There has been as much due diligence that's gone into setting it up as possible. And then as we scale it out, each new launch that comes in will have that backed, support to anybody that's coming in. So that's a bit about how we're going to be trying to get out into the end of the phase one side and exactly what this base is. And so once we've got the liquidity, there's 18 liquidity pools that's going to be set up once we're fully live, and 8 of them are blockchain native pairs. And so, once if Brennan does end up hopping on. If not, I can explain how it works when I get into some of the images here. But it really is a shared liquidity network. Like if you had wanted to buy a certain asset and it makes more sense to route through two others, it will take that path. And so it's a bit hard to wrap your head around until you see it in action and you look at some of the transaction hashes on how this thing's working. But yeah, I'm just excited to share this whole thing with you guys. It's been a run. Okay, do we want to just jump into it? I think the best spot might be just kind of a quick go over. I have a more thorough one where there's kind of it's an hour and 40 minutes of the white paper walkthrough where I actually go through and explain everything in it. So I think I could do just a quicker version of it, probably 10 minutes. And then from there, I can go into some of the contracts and then into some of the DApps. And the way that I'll try and explain it is a bit more of the rollout kind of as it happens. So I think that we'll go with that approach here. So let me get started here with the white paper. So I think the word count in this white paper is about 40% of my master's thesis. Here, share screen. Okay, cool. Can you guys see this?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so at a glance, like what the phase one plan of Geeks Ecosystem is really moving towards is setting up financial and social infrastructure. And so what we're looking to do here is establish a global peer-reviewed trading environment for digital assets. And so, these blockchains have a lot of things that they can be used for. These decentralized immutable ledgers have a lot of power. But as you guys know, one of the main ways that folks decide to use this is for trading digital assets. That's in our neck of the woods, it's the primary approach and primary way that people use the chains. And so I think there's a lot of problems with the way that this is done. Like, I think that liquidity pools inherently on their own provide a massive single point of failure. I think that we decentralize things way too fast. I do think that there is some amount of trust that is needed. And then, we look at decentralization more as a spectrum where we move from being centralized to a state of decentralization as opposed to 100% of the tokens in the liquidity pool, massive bundle, everybody go for it. All of a sudden, we've got people 5 to 10x in profit, we are holding on to 5 to 10 times the amount of value of what's in the liquidity pool. And then everything just nukes, which looking at the 99% of failed projects, it's kind of why. And so that's one of the big reasons that I call this Geeks Ecosystem, and that anybody that calls this a project, I just like to say, hey, this isn't a project. Like, projects have end dates. Like, projects have a defined time where something is finished. It has a start date, an end date, deliverables, outcomes, etc. And Geeks Ecosystem has no end date. It's intended to continue rolling and evolving over time. And so by calling something a project, you are saying it's going to end. And that's the way that we look and treat a lot of these cryptocurrencies that are being made. So this here in this graphic is really what we're going to be getting set up. And there's a few simple parts to it. The first is the different DApps that we're going to have, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 here. This is our 6th for our governance. This is our liquidity network that we're going to have on each side. The simple way of describing this is that we take ETH and we pair it with each one of the assets in the ecosystem. And then we take Geeks and we pair it to each one of the assets in the ecosystem. And then we do the same thing with Fire. And so this base here of these 3 tokens provides a way that we can then add any new token to it and it creates a lot of on-chain arbitrage, which stimulates volume. And then we've got the cross-chain arbitrage opportunities for the other side. So there's always going to be an opportunity to trade assets within the ecosystem. And so when we get down into the DEX, like this is going to be a specifically designed kind of more centralized exchange style trading platform for navigating this platform. The second, or I guess the third main thing beside the tokens is the NFTs. And so I know that people have a bad track record with NFTs. Historically, I've got so many dead ones in my wallet also that went absolutely nowheres. And I understand that that's the case for a lot of folks. The way that we designed the NFTs and my kind of strategy on bringing these in was quite a bit different. The reason that we had done a lot of the NFTs was that I looked at one of the main issues with having projects being able to achieve those 8-9 figure plus market caps was that if you start at a $10,000 market cap and you fair launch it, and then you've got 80% of the supply that was acquired, before roughly $250,000 market cap, you're now fighting that sell pressure every step of the way. And so it makes it really difficult. And so I kind of flipped the script a little bit. And what I did was I said, okay, well, we can give away some of the revenue sources from our different applications, from the ecosystem, from the liquidity pool to the different NFTs. And so what that did was that allowed us to do a fairly large raise in terms of the NFTs by giving away parts of the ecosystem. And since the ecosystem is so large, it supported this really well without having to give away too much. And so that's something that we had designed here. And so, one of the big ones was we had 50 of these gardening orangutans that were $2,000 each. So this was a $100,000 NFT collection. And the outcome of this was just 5% annual inflation, which is standard for anything and anywheres. And so then we, added in some burn mechanisms to get that offset. The Frog Army was, here's 2 utilities that we have that are really cool. We're going to give 10% of the supply of these and then give these guys bonus points while using this application here. These guys, here's 1% of the pool from here and 1% of the pool from here. That'll go on out. And so that was kind of the gist, was just how many of the little things can we fraction off? There's a 1.5% fee on the bridge. These guys get 1%. The other half comes back to the treasury. And so this whole holistic picture let us get a large enough raise from the NFT sale that going into the launch, we actually have, I've calculated it to be 15 to 20 times less sell pressure than a standard project would have at a $1 million market cap. And the reason for this is that normally at a $1 million market cap, there's roughly 10% of supply that's going to be left in the liquidity pool. Good ratio is going to be 10% of that $1 million market cap is in ETH for the liquidity. And then you're going to have roughly 60 to 80% that's circulating, with the rest being in the dev wallet or something else. And so that 60 to 80% was often acquired in the ranges from 20,000 up to 500,000, ish market cap. So you've got a lot of the folks that are going to be, 2 to 5 times up on their assets, meaning that they could sell profitably. And so that creates a lot of sell pressure, especially when you've got that amount of supply. And so I made a little graphic that I had shared in the chat to kind of explain this. And I think it's really important. Just let this come over here. So it looks like this normally, where, if the average DeFi community at $1 million market cap is holding 70% of supply at $1 million market cap, like they're holding $700,000. But the problem is that there's only $100,000 here in Lick, so if just a couple whales came by with 10% supply and fired it in, you're going to have 75,000 of that come back out after price impact. All of the folks diamond-handed, you've got 85% of the community that's diamond-handed, but your project's down 80% in value. And so one of the main things that people are always asking is like, why is the price going down? It's because the liquidity ratio to the total amount of supply is implying that that's the case. And so in the event of something like Geeks quite literally is starting like this with all of the supply over here with me. And I'm far more interested in building this whole thing out than trying to get access to the funds in the liquidity pool. I mean, I just put it in there. These back. One more. So yeah, so that's just a bit about the design of, you know, why we have so many NFTs. That's kind of my answer for that. Was that it was the most beneficial thing that we could do for the, you know, long term of the ecosystem. All that I'm going to do after this is just touch on the, you know, different assets that we have, the different dApps, and then I'll just do a bit of a code review after that. Let me just see here if there was any questions in the chat here. Oh, looks good. Looks good. Okay. So yeah, so we've got 4 tokens that we'll have in the ecosystem as it gets started. We've got our main Geeks token, which is designed, as I said here, to be a cross-chain pairing standard. So the idea, you know, once we get into more of the phase 2 scaling things, and we've built this really strong liquidity network that's backing Geeks Ecosystem, is that we can then take Geeks, we can pop it onto a new blockchain, you know, and we can say, okay, folks, if you want to launch projects, you know, you can buy the Geeks token, fund your liquidity pool with it, and then now folks on any blockchains will be searching index tools for Geeks as opposed to just searching for tokens. Because if you search ETH, that offers no value in the assets that are paired with it. If you search BNB, it offers nothing. If you search SOL, it offers nothing. And so by having this setup where you can, you know, have the tokens, and we can have on our website set up of, okay, these are the projects that have passed the peer review. These are the projects that we as a community have decided that we want to launch. You know, these are the things that have been added to the ecosystem, right? Then all you got to do is say, okay, let me check the token, check the website to make sure that the team has approved that this is something that they have. And then now you've got the, you know, what I think is one of the first, you know, signs of quality in, you know, DeFi trading since, you know, Uniswap came out years ago. The next that we have is a token called Fire, which is designed for more purchasing and burning tokens. And so we're going to be having a lot of the supply of Fire in the treasury. And so since the Fire token's paired with everything else, all we can do is just flip the Fire over to the token and then burn it. So it allows us to have a very strong deflationary measure right from our own source, where we can just have a ton of assets that we have and just flip it over, those are gone, flip it over, those are gone. So that's that supply here for is mostly meant for. And so that's how we'll be working within our own ecosystem. The next thing is our DeFi token, which is going to be our governance token. And so we're going to work on the governance model for this. You know, a lot of folks have asked. From my research, the best model that we'll have is something called a quadratic voting model. And so what that does is that it means that one vote isn't necessarily equal to one token. It's equal to the square root of your tokens. And so this means that people with more tokens still have more vote, but that it doesn't get out of hand. And so a good example is that, you know, at launch, if you wanted 1% of supply, you'll need $10,000, right? But let's say that somebody had $100 worth of tokens. Instead of you getting 100 times, you know, more, you know, you would get, say, 10 times more votes than that other person. So if you had, you know, 100 tokens, you would get 10 votes. You know, if you had 25 tokens, you would get 5 votes. And so that's kind of how it would scale out, is that, you know, the whales can't run away with it per se in terms of the voting. And then what we have here is, you know, this here says host Hippo, but it's actually just going to be called Hippo when we get going. And so that's going to be our flagship meme token. You know, and so I think that, you know, to avoid this getting kind of weighed down with too much crazy technical detail, you know, there's a lot of investors that just are here for the fun, here for the vibes, here for the memes. You know, there's other folks that are here for the tech. There's some folks that are here for the culture. Some here for the online community. There's something for everybody. And so I wanted there to be something for everybody in the ecosystem as a whole. So that's why this one's in here. The NFTs are pretty simple. These guys mint tokens. These are ERC-721 miners. These are the Tangs. The pups, they get dual rewards in ETH and Geeks. Toll Rabbits, they get any rewards in any token that's gone through the bridge. The frogs, these guys get 10% from the stakehouse on any chain that it goes to, and then 10% from the Shillitary. these guys here get 10% of everything from the ecosystem, and then these guys get volume from the Hippo token, and then revenue from the D app as well. And so it's like I said, it's just taken a bit of a branding change just to make it a little bit more of a meme. And then here's our dApps. So one of the ones that I can actually show off here first, just to get into a bit of a demo, is what's called Military. And so this is designed to be like the ecosystem's military, which, you know, it's not a violent thing in terms of what the military does. Like, it's attention acquisition. Like, shilling is the act. It's the thing that we can do that is like the most economical way of bringing attention to the ecosystem. And so I think that raid bots are largely inefficient. A lot of them only offer 15 minutes that the things are live. So here's the Shilitary dApp. So I'll just explain this. But the problem with raid bots is that you've only got about 15 minutes that you've got the raids live. And so if you're not there raiding, you know, you've got to wait for, you know, everybody to come in and hit your amounts. Once it's gone, people typically don't look at those raids again. Like, they're only going to be looking at the one that's live. If I had done the math on it, that if you had wanted to do 50 raids in a typical raid bot, it would be largely an 4 to 10 hour event, depending on how fast your community is raiding. 10 hours on the 15 minutes, you know, more of a 4 on about the 6-minute time frame for completing each raid. And that would just be a raid leader just being in chat doing that all the time. I think that's foolishly inefficient, and wanted a better way to do it in a way that also could generate revenue as well. So this is the Shilitary front end. It's got a few sections. It's got the project owners, it's got the Shilitary team, it's got some leaderboards, and then it's also got your user profile. So here on the project owner side, this is where other projects can actually purchase attention from us. So we're effectively selling attention at this point, which is a lot of, you know, what the currency is that things are run by. So if I just go to X here, you know, and then I come back to, you know, let me find another link here. X, Geeks Ecosystem. So let me say that I had just wanted, you know, this one link here, share, copy link. Here we go. So let's say that I had wanted this link, you know, and then I pop it in. I can now buy this raid, and then it'll populate on the raid side. Oh, what's cool is, as a little extra kind of security measure, what Brennan went and did was just made sure that, oops, I want this one. That if you tried to populate it with a link that wasn't X, that it would tell you that the link must be from X or Twitter. So we just got a bit of a security check there. So I can grab this, you know, X link that we had wanted here. I could fire it in, and I could buy like 1, 3, or 5. And then on the Shilitary team side, the links will actually populate here. So you can then click the link. It'll take you right to it. You do the raid. Boom, 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 boom. You click next tweets. It'll then refresh, give you 5 new ones. Click through them all. Boom, boom. So you can actually do 15. You could do, you know, I've done on a PC, you can do the 50 raids in about 10 minutes. On your own. So now any community member, and if they miss any raids, it'll just wait for them until they get back. So that was the way that this was designed. So it's basically like a Gatling gun where with tweets logged. So this is kind of position 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you click next, it goes 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, next. And so to prevent us from getting overloaded, there's just a bit of a limit, you know, and then a time when it resets. And so this is done automatically. And then these funds get sent to like an accountant contract that then processes it and keeps track of everything. So I'll show you guys that. So that's where you go and do your raids. Then there's a leaderboard. It actually tracks like who's done the most number of raids and then the points that people have. And so there's a points multiplier from the NFTs. And the points are important because your percentage of all total points determines your rewards that comes back. So this is kind of the biggest leaders or gainers from this service here as well. And then the last one is this user profile. So there's 6 different ranks that you can actually progress through within the Shilitary. And so it starts at, you know, a lower rank. You know, it keeps track of how many tweets that you've rated. your pending rewards, which the rewards automatically claim when you click the next tweets button. And then it shows you how many points that you need to go to the next rank. So just for funsies here, I can go into the Shilteri contract. I can go give bonus points. Let me just have to check what my ID was. Not, I think it was 2. I think it was user 2 points 500. Let's see if this is the one. If I actually wanted to know, I could just come down to DeFi deposit dog tag 2 dog tag 1 dog tag chef. So it's actually 1 that I was supposed to do. 1 transact. So I can give these bonus points, which if any community members are just being outstanding citizens within the online community that we've got here, I can go in and give bonus points. One of the main ways that you'll get bonus points is by completing the Geeks Academy courses. So this here should update. Might take 20 seconds or so. I just want to show you guys because it's really cool. This one was deployed yesterday afternoon. I gave it to Brennan. I think that's the one.
In the meanwhile, what is seen as a successful raid? Like, do you need to retweet and comment on a tweet, or when is it seen as successful?
So it's considered to be successful when, let me be very clear. The Shilteri front end here, if I go to the Shilteri team, these tweets to raid, there's actually nothing stopping somebody from just clicking next tweets. So it's just up to you to go and interact with it. And so what I am telling folks is to like everything and retweet what you're okay with having on your account. If there's some junk content that's being fed to us from folks coming in and buying random tweets, I think that's just going to be no bueno. I think Brendan updated a Shilteri contract that I don't quite have right now, so it might take a second. But I had shared the images before of what they looked like. So the gist is that your profile image changes as you update ranks, which I wanted to show, but it's okay. I just got to grab a different contract at the moment. So on the Shilteri team here, you click these. I say like everything, retweet what you're happy to have on your profile. Likely any of the Geeks Ecosystem stuff will be involved in that. And then click next tweets. Like there's no connection between Twitter and preventing you from clicking this button, if that makes sense. And I also think that it's, it would be wrong of me to tell you that you have to retweet everything on your profile if you don't want to have certain content on your profile. But at least getting the like counts up, is the minimum. The like and the view counts up is what's going to be huge baseline. And then comment as you would as well. What we had worked on before was and something that Rocky has for us is a list of tweets and comments and things that you can share. So if you're the type of person that wants to help participate in raids, that wants to comment on certain things, but you're not sure what to say, that we can have that taken care of as well. That there's just a list of things, and here's a little bit of narratives and stuff that you can pull on, because it's a bit of an art form, really. The commenting on things in certain ways. But yeah, so I'll get all to Brendan just to get the contract plugged in here. I might be using the wrong one on my end. Let me just see if there's anything that's coming in. Yeah, John's sharing them here. So in the main chat here, you can see what the different ranks would be as you progress through them. So yeah, there was 6, and so we had these really cool character designs done up by Neil. to kind of show off the different aspects of the Shilitary. And so I had the ranks be like DGen to Geek to Ape to Chad to Dev to Geek. And so I thought that was a really cool kind of pipeline. This one here is probably my fave. Love this little blockchain wizard guy. Super cool. But yeah, so all that this needs is just a final test from me tonight when we get it going, and then it'll be fully good to go. When we had done this before on a previous blockchain that we were playing around on, we had managed to get, I would say, 5,000 plus raids done. Like cumulatively for a small community, we had done 5,000 raids in like 2 weeks or something. Like it's so efficient and so fast for being able to get anything done. So yeah, that takes care of the Shilitary side. The next one that I had here was the pets, and so we've just got a description of what these are. And so, when I knew that we had needed to have like a substantial NFT collection that was going to be, fractioned out across different parts of the ecosystem, I was trying to think of what the inspiration for it was, and something that folks would probably resonate with. And the thing that I got stuck and fixated on was digital pets. My first legit serious investment in DeFi actually was these pups here, these guys. So there's something that I want to get across from this, which is pretty personal to me and my kind of DeFi journey. And it's that when I showed up to DeFi, like I was told by everybody in the community, to work for your bags. Like that's what I was told. And so I also had done the math on the potential of, okay, if I make a decent investment into something at a $50,000 market cap, and we get this thing to $5 million market cap for 100x, I'm going to be absolutely set. And I think that this is a logic that a lot of the people on this call have done. And so these pup images that you're looking at here were the investment that I made 2 years ago, knowing nothing about DeFi. I never wrote a contract. I think I was still using Cody as my Telegram handle at the time. Folks were like, hey, you should make a different Telegram handle. I didn't have a PFP, it was just a C, and then I got into the community, I got involved, and Geeks Ecosystem quite literally is me still working for my bags and everybody else's bags that invested in, Brennan's ideas and then my ideas as we had continued onwards. That's how this had come to be. So I really did, like 2 years ago, start as an investor. I purchased 14 of these things that I thought were going to bring in enough passive income that I'd just be able to chill. I think I made a $10,000 investment in a micro cap project, being like, okay, I just got to get this thing to $5 million market cap, and then I'm going to be cruising. And then we went to another blockchain, the journey I can get into another time, so these got a special place in my heart, these guys. And so I wanted to give them some friends. And so I did. So I made some beavers, so these are some like software developer beavers. I got some frogs that were set up that were part of like a military brigade / like kitchen brigade to run the Shilitary and the steakhouse. I got these toll rabbits. These are the kids of the toll rabbits. And then there's some ones that work at the bridge. And then, these guys here are the gardening orangutans. I can pull up this here as well, which is Google Drive. Just to show you guys some of the cool artwork that Mikey's done for this drive. Yep, this is good. Let's just take 2 seconds. There we go. So there's Geeks Ecosystem. And so here's some of the stuff that Mikey's done. So, at one point we were working on just growing the tree. This idea that like we're growing something, seemingly organic out of our laptops together, and then just continuing to have that grow over time. We had our different token images that we were putting on the tree and playing with it. we've got a whole thing for the zookeepers and then the NFTs. We've got some super cool images that he's done. So I look at the bridge kind of like a portal that's like moving between different worlds. And so the toll rabbit's kind of protecting that. I think he had some, for different ways of visualizing it on different chains. We put the fire on the inside for when that one was going through. These guys is like the gardening orangutans, so kind of visualizing them as folks that are, just generating and farming these tokens. It's like 5% inflation each year, but we thought it was fun to kind of picture them as little farmers. So it's little things like this that, I just wanted to put some of the imagination back into DeFi. I think it's really important. I think that, a lot of us just get a little lost in the sauce, thinking that like it's just buttons on our phone, and so just by kind of picturing this really, it's a bit of a playful world, but it's also got the tech to back it up, that it's this super cool place to go and be, in an online environment. And so, yeah, it's just things like this that I've got spread through, every different corner of the ecosystem. And, Jinx, the person who's been asking a few questions is, and his name's kind of like Jinx, like Geek Storyteller. Like he's a super cool guy. He works writing for, comedies in the Netherlands for Netflix. And so he's actually started drafting, different stories for these characters. We've got some like background, once we get the funds, we'll have a bit of a media place, and we'll start working on some of that like art and culture stuff as well. Which I think is going to really kind of help have some more cool content for driving it. But for the folks that just want to know what buttons to click and when to get the money, it's just this button here. So the beavers will get their 3 different rewards. The frogs are just going to get rewards in ETH. The rabbits will just have their little claim button once there's tokens that are here. It'll just be a little claim button here that you can click, show all your different receipts that you've gotten over time. Pups got the dual rewards, and then the tangs just generate tokens over time. And so I said back to the main idea here was that like we as humans like want companionship, and so we pay a lot for that, and one of the ways that we do that is through pets. I think mainly dogs is probably one of the best examples. And our dogs, they stay at home while we work. They need money from us to stay alive. They'll run into vet bills, different problems, you name it, and so I thought it was cool to build some kind of online, like digital companionship, if you will, but in a way that they could generate some money for you to help pay your bills. And so I just kind of flipped that on its head. And so that's where that inspired a lot of what these guys are here. So yeah, that takes care of those. And then the last one here is just the bridge. So Brennan's just got a minor UI update. I'll just refresh to see if he had pushed it through yet. Not yet. So we've just got, this is the chain ID. He's just going to turn this to, BSC. And then if we change the destination chain to base, and it'll just ask us to change the network. Like this here would change to like 8453, which would go to base. And so our transaction times in testing have been 1 minute. 1 minute transaction times we've been able to get going cross-chain, which has been super cool. And so as we scale out the ecosystem, like this will start with being Geeks here. And then after we launch the next one, there'll be Fire. After that, we'll have DeFi, or after that, we'll have Hippo. After that, we'll have DeFi. And then every time a new token gets added to the ecosystem, we'll be able to have it here. And then you can go to BSC to base and then base to DeFi. And then the relayer wallet pays for your gas transaction on the other side. So the cheapest is for sure bridging from base to the other side. You'll pay a cent or less. Bridging from BSC, it looks like it's about 25 cents. So you're not going to get creamed on the gas costs. And then it's 1% to go across, and then it'll generate those transactions in the main side. Let me just pop this open here. So before I jump into any of the code stuff, this is what's live for the Shilitary. Is that the Shilitary one, Brian? 7461. Oh, that makes sense why. Okay. It's fine. I can get to it after. So yeah, I'll just pause there real quick. I feel like that was a ton of info that I just dropped. Gotcha. Okay, cool. I'll show you guys a bridge transaction because these are super cool. So I'll bridge one from base to BSC. So on the front end, this would look like a click on the front end. Not sure if Brennan has them in there for me to do it there, but I'll just do it here. So transactions gone through. So I'll show you guys this hash. So what's going to happen is that it's going to go from my wallet to the bridge, and then the bridge is going to send it to the dead address right here. Burned, 0x dead. What happens next is that it takes 0.5% and it sends it to the treasury, and it takes 1% and it sends it to the Rabbit wallet. Then the bridge contract emits an event emission, which we're going to get into this here. So it was 302. So I should be able to come into, say, MongoDB, back to the relayer script. So here on base at 358, the relayer has already found the event emission that had happened, which means that very shortly here, we will see it'll generate the transaction, approve it, and then send a message through to the Telegram bot, and then the bot will send it through also. So I'll just give it a second here. So there's the transaction that's approved here. So I can go to the output transaction, which is on BSC scan. And so you can see it went from the null to here for the amount of tokens. And then I can click on my wallet here, which will show 20 seconds ago the import from the BSC side. So that's how fast you can get from one to the other. As a user, it'll seem almost instantaneous. And since it's on AWS, there's no concerns that we have of this coming down. Like AWS's whole job is to keep this running all the time. So if it ever did have something come down, like it's set up that it'll spin one up. And if it ever missed anything while we were putting up a new one, the relayer will actually catch up through the missed transactions and then have your transaction processed. So in that report that I had shared from myself and Greg when we drafted it up, it's pretty much best practice. Like it is like an enterprise level approach that we've taken to securing our bridge and our relayer in the middle. And so yeah, I could go back and forth the other way if we had wanted. And so yeah, the bridge is pretty simple little thing that we've got here. Like this is the code. This is the code for the bridge here. It runs from here on 516 down to here. So it's only about 250 lines. So I can get into the actual stuff of it later, but the gist is that on our withdraws, like we're allowing anybody to come up and, if we want to make the withdraws here, it's the only relayer call that's going to be processing these. And then on the deposits, anybody can make the calls. So if anybody wants to send tokens, anybody can come up and send the tokens. But the transaction that's generating the mint can only be done by the relayer wallet, which it'll then go through here, interface to the token contract and do the mint. And so that comes from the wallet that's got the bridge looking over it. So that one's really cool. Another one that's really cool is this Geeks accountant contract. So this guy here goes from 1 to roughly 350. And so what we've done, and what's even super cool, is that all of our addresses that we have here, when we go live, it's actually just the shilitary and the Geeks token that's going to be live. And so as we deploy the new revenue sources, we've got the functions here to update these as time goes on. And so what the accountant is set up for doing is it's actually tracking who's getting paid, which is the pups, the beavers, the hippos, the frogs, the shilitary, myself, Brennan, and the treasury. And so down here in the fees, like I've got, okay, here's the address that's going to be going to the relayer. So I can send the fees to the relayer and track how much fees that we've had directly through this. And then I can swap out any of our addresses that we need. And then here is actually I'm going to keep track of the payrolls. So this single contract at any point, we can build a simple little UI to look into it. But by looking at these and then the data over time, we can actually see like how much each one of the NFTs has made in ETH that's come through this. So any of the amount of money that's come to Brendan and I through this as well will be just viewable right directly from here. All of the money that's ever gone to the treasury, you'll be able to come here and see as well. So this is what I refer to this as building in a glass box. Like that's what this is. Like this is we are operating, this digital economy in a way such that there's no questions about what's happening. Like everything is trustless on chain. Everything is transparent about what's happening and set up that way. It's right here. Somebody pop it in there. Oh, it's Clyde. Clyde, you shopping for a clone again?
No, not this time. Go ahead.
So we've got our cuts here that comes into everybody. And so, yeah, Brendan and I, we've put a ton of work into this. So we're taking 10% of all of the passives to each of us that comes through this. Then we've got 10% of the beavers, 10% of the pup, 20% of all of the ETH that comes in from the token contracts is going to go to the pups. 40% of what comes in from hippos will go there. 60% of what comes in from the Shilitary will go there as well. So if we needed to adjust these at any time, we can. And then here, all that this is a bunch of logic that's saying that if you've received funds from the Shilitary, do all of these things. And so I think that there's two folks on here. Michael's still here and Glitch is still here as well. So guys, remember when I was telling you guys that as long as you know how to do UINTs, basic calculations, and if like a little bit of if logic, you can write a ton of code. Everything that's been done in this contract from here, this is just introducing addresses. This is just the function that you did in lesson 2. So all this from here down, all of this code right to here was covered already in lesson 2. And then this rest of this stuff here is just setting amounts, doing some basic math. And then this here is when you get to Brennan level of how to actually ensure that these payments happen, So this is the, small percent, I didn't even know how to do this. This was a Brennan problem, Right? The rest of it I had all set up. I couldn't get the payments to work, so it went to Brennan to solve. And so this is what he came back with. And so, yeah, it's just for all of our different revenue sources that we have. And so all of these have already been tested. This is currently on chain and is the one that we'll end up using. And so we'll have this on base and BSC. So we'll know our base revenues. We'll know our BSC revenues. If we go to any new chain, we can see how it goes. We'll have an account over there as well. And so all of this here is just, if I wanted to add some funds to the relayer, technically I set this up that anybody could come up, and send bonus funds to, someplace. So this is just if we wanted to, send extra funds to myself. So like if Brennan was going to get some funds or I was going to get some funds for some work that was happening that we were doing, on top of our normal things, I would just come in here and call this from the treasury. And then we would see that, those funds would then show up here in the payrolls for what we've all gotten. So yeah, so this is just transparent fund management 101 really. And so we're going to make another one as well that when we do have payments going out from the treasury, that's not to these places, that we'll be able to attach receipts. We can add images to show what the agreements were between things and so forth. So it's pretty cool. Let's see here. Other one that's really cool that I wanted to show you guys was the Shilitary. So the reason that this is all yellow is because we've actually maxed out this contract. we're super lucky that it deploys, because this here is saying that the contract code size can only be this big, and you are over that. So it may not deploy, but we made a couple tweaks so it does. So this Shilitary contract that I was explaining to you guys, like, we have maxed out a smart contract. Like, there is no more that can go into this. But the idea of this, like I said, was really so that way we have some like societal ranking system, so that way we have a streamlined way of doing daily tasks as a community. I've got a way of rewarding people with the points for doing different tasks. Like, I will quite literally like pay you to get educated in DeFi. Like, I've built a series of classes. I'll have bonus points assigned for completing them. You complete them, I send your dog tag, bonus points. Now, anytime DeFi tokens or ETH comes in, you get a higher percentage of those rewards, compared to the folks around, And so for the folks that commit to the process of hitting some tweets every day for 15 minutes, doing a lesson here and there throughout the week, like you'll see that come back through this application here. So we've just got a way of sending some rewards for the folks that are doing the Solidity stuff. Like, this system that we've designed here is kind of the highest level approach. And by doing it this way, we could have quite literally 100,000 people on this. And if I wanted to send out ETH rewards, it would still cost me a cent on Base. If we had 1 million people on here, I could still click the button and it would send out rewards to everybody on Base for a cent. So this is, infinitely is a bit of a stretch, but there's no calculatable limit by Brendan and I by how many folks can get on this application and be using it at any one particular time, which is super cool. So yeah, we've just got a bunch of these points. I wanted to have some fun with the point system, so I'm at 0, 420, elite, 69, 69, 18, 159. I think there's some folks on the call that number means something too. I think Badass Beaver, Daz, Gatsby, Brennan, myself, Warrior, Jay, John. So I wanted the dev number to be something that was meaningful, and then I made boobs, geek, just to have some fun with that as well. We've got this cool timer that's up in here, and so the rest of this here is just a bunch of stuff for getting the images to populate. Some stuff for setting the different deployments. So I'm not going to have them ready at launch, but I can add them later. And so when you're ranking up, like in order to hit the dev status, like you'll need to complete far enough through Geeks Academy that you get what's called a dev diploma, which is super cool. So then I'll airdrop you a dev diploma, and then you'll be able to rank up to the dev status. And then same for geek, And so this is basically the gist of this is that once you've proven that you have the ability to be a blockchain developer, you can write staking contracts, claim contracts, token contracts, NFT contracts at baseline, then you've got your stuff set up on the dev side. The geek will come in once you've understood all of the other peripheral stuff around it, like a near mastery of an understanding of what's going on in DeFi, what's going on, how to manage the contracts that you've set up, that's like a lot of stuff that's in like Google Sheets and everything else, and so this, I'm not going to charge anybody for this kind of an education. I think it's essential for us as a community to have that knowledge base as a group, and I think that it's going to make us, just so much better as a group for everybody to understand and look at things and just to understand DeFi and the environment that we're playing in the same way that Brendan and I do, or to get close, or to be further along than you are now, is really my goal for this. So I don't need to get too into the weeds on the rest of this. I've got a different 20-minute walkthrough that goes through the Shilitary stuff. The tags here are really cool. So if anybody doesn't know what's going on with the tags, these are ERC 721 miners. So what these guys do here is that there's only 50 of them, and they've got something really simple, which is down here, which is that they've got some amount of time, which I'll make equal to a single day. So it's 86,400 seconds. And we'll have some amount of tokens, which 5,479 by 365 days and 50 people works out to 5% annual inflation for the whole token. It's basically 100 million tokens on base is what it'll be. And so this little function here is just seeing how much time has passed, how many times that they should be able to mint that, and then it calls the mint function, the tang mint function on the Geeks token contract. And so if we were to go to the Geeks token and then I were to go Control F tang mint, this right here is what makes this super secure. Is that the only thing that can call the tang mint is the tang contract. And on the tang contract, the only way that it can call it is by running its internal timer. There's no input for this. So nobody owning a tang can just say, mint me as many tokens as I want. They're stuck to, this time, token amount that we have here. So that's how this guy here is set up, and then it just keeps track of their rewards that they have. And so the tangs are, if we get into high market caps, the tangs will become an incredibly valuable NFT. It scales with market cap pretty well. So that takes care of the tanks, and then I don't want to get too into the weeds on it because I think there's other fun things to talk about. But the pups, the beavers, and the frogs all kind of run on this same mechanism that we've had, and it's one that we've had designed for about 13 months now. 13 months is how long we've had this tech, and so it was about a year that Brennan and I had been developing together before we had gotten there. I think we went through 9 iterations of kind of asset distribution before we got to the one that was the one that we had wanted to settle on. So that's that one. The last one here is going to be the hippos. And so there's something really fun with these that is going to make more sense for me to actually show. As let me grab it here. It's a Geeks Ecosystem diagram. A lot of stuff in here. There we go. Okay, so here's the male side. So I'll show you guys this. So these are, a super cool it's a super cool NFT collection. And so the way that these were designed was that it's basically a video game where you have a competitive, kind of recover the dying hippo population, the digital house hippo population. And so what you have is that you've got male NFTs and you've got female NFTs. And the males and the females breed, and then they produce babies. And then the babies then grow up and produce, new adults. And then this cycle continues, and then based on the percentage of the population that you've helped recover, you then get rewards from the hippo token. And so what we have here is all of the different kind of like character designs that I've been mapping out with Neil for, okay, here's the baby trait, here's the adult trait, here's the baby trait, here's the adult trait. And then when you get, fully into it, what you end up with is these guys. So here's kind of the full, like male collection. We've got the babies here that we've got set up. So the babies have their traits. So like here's the trucker guy, the little gigolo fit. So the trucker hat would fly into, I don't know if it's quite here yet, but the gigolo fit would turn into this guy. And then the males and the females breed, and then based on the traits of the males and the females, they then determine the traits of the offspring as well. And so we've coined this, you'll see in the back here, horny hippos is kind of what we've coined it, kind of like a play on the hungry hippos that would have been out before. And so we're just finishing up this collection here. And then what's going to happen is that Jinx is working on some stuff for some crazy stories around these guys. We've got Neil that's going to be working on some artwork. I've got a guy that's going to be doing video design, and then we'll have some cool videos for them. And then we've got Brennan that's going to be making a D app, and I'll have my contract finish into it. So, we quite literally, I don't like using the terms because I feel like it's overdone in the space of like, oh, it's a 15-person team. Like there's so much happening, so I just tend to stick to, the outcomes of the work that's being done. And so this is one of the cool things that we've got there. So I've got this, and then I've got the female traits over on the other side. So that's that one, And so if there was any last thing that I think that folks truly need to understand is it's our liquidity network, which folks definitely don't understand at the moment. And so I made this image so that way, with me explaining it, that it could showcase the infrastructure that we have. And so keep in mind that this doesn't include the Shilitary contract. It doesn't include any of the NFT contracts. It doesn't include the hippos, the hippoarum, the steakhouse, the decks, any of that. None of that is in this graphic here. So this is actually a very simple version of our ecosystem. This is just for our liquidity network. So it's easy if you just chunk it down into one chain as opposed to trying to look at both, because the other chain is just a mirror of the first one. And if we needed to add any new chain, the relayer could just come into the middle here, and then you could add this whole thing here, and then that would become basically base, or that could become ETH, and then you could stick it in, So if we had wanted to add an entire new blockchain, I don't know if this is going to copy or not because it's pretty big, but it might. Let's see. So let me go unlock here. Go here, back. Let's go here. I'll click unlock image. Quite literally, us adding a new blockchain looks like this. There you go. This could be, for example, ETH. Then we could put another one here. Then if we had wanted a fourth blockchain, we could do that as well. If we wanted a fifth blockchain, it would just open up, and then it would just sit at the intersection of 5, then 6, then 7, then 8. And then that's what our infrastructure would look like. And so this process that I just described here of getting this hooked up to a bridge, minutes. It would then be about 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes for Brennan to make the connections for each liquidity pool. So the more liquidity pools that we have, adding each new one is just quite a bit of work for Brennan. And you'll see why once I get into this here. So at baseline, what the ecosystem is going to look like is Relay to bridge to Geeks token contract to ETH and Geeks. So this right here, then we've got the Geeks taxes that are going to be coming out to here, and then the ETH taxes to this to here. So none of this on the right side is actually happening at launch. The reason that this has taken us so long is to have the infrastructure that we can do this whole other thing here. So see how we've got Geeks Fire here, Fire hooked up to the bridge. This process here will now only take us about 20, 30 minutes. And then this process here will only take us 20, 30 minutes. And then this process here will only take us 20, 30 minutes. And that's to do that on both sides, right? So what you're looking at here is Uniswap pools where we have ETH paired to Geeks. Okay, so if you're going from ETH to Geeks, it's actually going to be a 0% tax after we get out of our launch phase. If you're going to go from Geeks to ETH, which is considered selling, that's going to be a 5%. And so that's the same across all of our tokens. So a week after launch, what's going to happen is that we're going to make a new token called Fire. We're going to make a liquidity pool for Fire, and we're going to let it launch. Then what's going to happen is that we're going to grab our ETH and we're going to make a liquidity pool with Fire and Geeks, and it's going to have 3% taxes coming in either way here. So what's going to be super cool about this approach here is that once we do this, we can then deploy the DeFi token, add the DeFi token, and then the DeFi token is going to get added to Fire. So now we've got DeFi paired to Fire, we've got DeFi paired to Geeks, we've got DeFi paired to ETH, ETH to Fire, Fire to Geeks, ETH to Geeks. Then we do it again. And so one of the things that I was explaining earlier, that if you follow the lines, is that the token-to-token swaps, see how it says token swap threshold, and then this says ETH swap threshold? Anytime that the token-to-token swaps are happening, what that means is that it's going to be stored in the contract differently. And so if the token swap threshold gets hit, the tokens get sold to ETH and then into the Geeks token. The DeFi tokens hit the swap threshold, DeFi gets swapped to ETH, ETH into the Geeks token. Hippo token swap threshold gets triggered into ETH, into the Geeks token. So now we have any of the ETH that people are using to try and buy Geeks, creating buy pressure. And the buy pressure is also going to come in from any of the token-to-token taxes from any of the token-to-token trading that happens. And what's even cooler is that this happens automatically. The liquidity pools will communicate to each other to find you the optimal outcome for getting you tokens. So if you ask to buy Geeks, and you're saying, I want to go from ETH to Geeks, but it's actually more beneficial for you to go from ETH into Fire, and then it's going to try and swap you from Fire into DeFi, and then it's going to swap you from DeFi into Geeks, and then send you the Geeks token. It'll do that. And then you'll have these guys going into here, these guys going into here, and then those will swap and then come back into Geeks. And so this is only on 3 tokens added on top of Geeks. And the network is intended that we can grow this network this way indefinitely. The token design that Brennan has created for Geeks Ecosystem allows this to just, there's no upper limit of how large the shared network can get around what's going on inside of it. So now what we've created is a token launching platform where, imagine if when ETH launched, well, ETH launched years before Uniswap was even a thing. But imagine if we launched a layer 1 blockchain and every project on the blockchain that launched said our value is tethered to this one token, being the blockchain coin. Geeks isn't a blockchain coin, it's blockchain agnostic. It exists over top of any blockchain. Its scope and size was designed to support more scalability than any one particular chain. And the infrastructure that we have in place supports that. So imagine that any token that launched on ETH said, I'll give a portion of my taxes of my token to support the buying pressure of ETH. Or they did that on BNB. Or they just did that on, Tonchain, or they just did that on anywhere else, on Tron, on Sol. It's no taxes on Sol, but any place that there's an EVM where there's token taxes, and all projects in the network said that we will support the asset that gives us value. Because if ETH goes down 10%, all of the projects that are on ETH go down 10%. If Geeks goes up 10%, any of the pools that are paired with Geeks goes up 10% in value. And so this is why in the blockchain world, when the layer 1s were popping off so hard, It's because the positive price appreciation of the main blockchain coin combined with the positive price appreciation of the assets on the chain led to this doubling effect where you were getting, magnified gains. And so it can get really crazy. Now, I've spent a long time, and the guys that have been with me for the last 2 years have also spent a long time on these layer one chains trying to make something big happen. We've had a layer one chain under $1 million market cap that we were trying to build and grow. We've had one that was, the ideas that Geeks came from, had a $320 million valuation and nothing even really got built other than the blockchain itself. And what we learned on those is large liquidity problems. When your largest asset, doesn't have an off-ramp, then you have a single point of failure being your centralized exchange or something without strong liquidity. And so this infrastructure for any token that then gets built to then come and launch with Geeks on top of it will now have the liquidity spread across all of this and all of this to help its network. So now we have this really stable liquidity base at the end of phase one that there doesn't run into liquidity problems, and then that's when you get, more of the larger buyers. That's when you get the whales. That's when you get the folks that are willing to make larger decisions, larger financial decisions, because they know that their money's not going to get stuck. I've got, this tons of assets, but I can't liquidate them without massive price impact. I mean, how many of you have ever owned a large position in a super micro cap token and you've been like, shit, I can't sell. Like it's, price impact, it's all of these reasons, that comes into it. So anyway, so that's the kind of short version of this, and I've got to refine this a little further as well, because technically all of the ETH/BNBs should be coming into the accountant and then accountant sending them out, and then all the tokens going into the treasury, and to the other tokens that they have as well. So yeah, it just gets a little more out there than this, but that's the gist. Okay, so good question here. BSC and Base. So the main reason for Base was that we needed a chain that was tethered to ETH for the reason that if you go to any chain that's super small, that you've got that liquidity problem that I was just describing. So we wanted something that was tethered to ETH. We wanted something that there's a strong developer network on, as Brendan and I will be leaning into this developer network ourselves. And then the third is that we wanted low transaction fees. There's a ton of microtransactions inside of Geeks Ecosystem. And my belief is that it is inefficient and not helpful to send the ecosystem out the gate to a place like ETH, where transaction costs are 100 to 1,000 times more per transaction than on a layer 2 like Base. And so that was one of the reasons that it had gone there. There's a quick way to get in and out of the chain if you had needed to get assets there or get assets off of there. And so that's one of the ones there. And then as well, was that it's a lot cheaper. It's not as cheap as some layer 2s. But the developer network that's there and the potential for getting something like this, like into, the eyes of, the BNB team, like into the rest is just so high. Like, I don't know if you guys saw what had happened recently with the project like 4.meme went to like $30 million evaluation, pretty much from a tweet that got sent out from the BNB core team. That was like, hey, we're supporting this, here they've got, and it was basically just a pump fund. It was just a pump fund, the equivalent of one on BNB. And so I think that it's going to be really valuable to come into a space and say, hey, like we've built a free token or we built a free airdropper. We've built a free token locker for your entire network. We've provided these essential developer tools for folks. On top of that, we've got this network where we're prioritizing, high quality and longevity and sustainability of digital assets, because every time that one dies, like that's more data to show that there's a bit of user error possibly going on with the chains, and so that's really there is the much lower transaction fees, that there's Like I understand that for some folks, they see that, BSC is considered GD, like I think that there's a big culture play that Geeks Ecosystem will have when folks show up, and there's a dev there that's like, hey, do you want to learn Solidity coding? Hey, do you want to be part of a community that's the most efficient rating group in DeFi? Hey, do you want to buy into digital assets that are safe and secure? Hey, do you want to grow into a multi-chain network that's as scalable as it gets? Like it cannot get more scalable, and these types of value propositions, and then now there's multiple places to play for if people like BNB or if people like ETH or any of the other places that we go. How have you made the build and development of the bridge seem so easy when I hear so many projects have no end of problems using them, and in addition that they get hacked? What do you do that others can't do? We know what we're doing. Yeah, that's a really good answer. Okay. Let me explain this part. That I had an understanding of how bridges worked a week ago. Like I got the gist, which provided that the final security piece was checked off of that wallet that I mentioned at the start of this call, I was going to be a happy boy and that we were going to be off to the races. Since acquiring the code and spending, Brennan knows it's been almost every single waking minute of my entire week was getting this sorted out. It was 25 hours of just siphoning information out of the guy that built it. And that was for mainly the relayer, And so Brennan would attest to this as well, that the solution that we got wasn't custom tailored to Geeks so much as had its own original purposes that it had been designed for, and then the added benefits that we were asking for kind of got built on top of it. And so Brennan was the one that had gone in and taken the contract and just trimmed the fat to get it down to specifically what we had needed. That Web3 side was entirely taken care of. Now, when it came to the Web3 side was entirely taken care of by Brennan and I going through it and having everything set up. Brennan and I did not know what we were doing in the Web2 side. And I have no problem telling folks when I'm out of my element, I don't know, but I will find the person who does. I've been super fortunate to have gotten a really good education at the university that I went to, spending 6 years there, and had a lot of really good friends around me that were just awesome folks. And so one of them just so happens to be a senior software engineer for a $1 billion company in Vancouver, and an expert in the cloud. And so I hit him up, when we had gotten the bridge, and so he was just on it right away. 6-hour phone call first night, full code walkthrough, full review, And so I'll just go to it because I think it's important. If anybody here on this call hasn't been through this document's very important. If anybody hasn't read this, I will go through this now. So the long story here is that anytime that you've ever heard about a bridge being hacked, it was not the only way that it was hacked was if they allowed somebody to get access to their private keys of the wallet that was the relayer, or it was just a malicious act of the people that owned it. It's the only two possible outcomes. And given how the space works, I'm going to guess it was always the second every single time. And so, and the reason for this is that the only security measure that we have, which is sufficient, it works, it's as good as it gets, it's as good as it needs to be, is to say this function can only be called by this address. That's enough. That's all that we need. And so we say that the bridge contract can only be called by the relayer. And we say that the token contract can only be called by the bridge. We do the same on the other side. And so that makes a perfect closed loop on everything that we need. Now, when got it set up. Like that's all that there is to it, is that this here is a wallet with code running over top of the wallet that's checking for an event from one side and tells it to auto do something on the other side, and has a ton of like security checks and features that are built into it to make sure that it's all good to go, right? And our database and all of this is stored in the cloud. We've got everything that we need stored, all in it, and so it's set to go. We've got it running. I think the fees that we're paying on this now are about $200 a month to keep this going and to have a really high throughput. So as I had mentioned at the start of this call, there was a single point of failure within the ecosystem, which I was addressing before we were going to launch. It was just the solution had taken a lot longer, right? And so the single point being this relayer is that if this relayer has anything that goes wrong, it can call the contracts, it can mint supply on any of these. That's the largest risk, was that the wallet can just do that. And so what we had here was that with careful consideration of Geeks ecosystem and the imminent high value of assets that will be flowing through its multi-chain shared liquidity network, best security practices must be followed to ensure investor confidence and safety. A single point of failure was identified within Geeks Ecosystem's blockchain architecture that was not within the control of its primary administrators. This was deemed an unacceptable risk. The information contained within this document, brief document, outlines the measures that have been taken to address this risk. Through these efforts, additional technical improvements were made to further enhance user experience within the ecosystem. And so we've just walked through this on the other chain, or on the other page. The outcomes of this are just one page. Greg and I made this really brief. So it was about 60 hours of work for me that got all of this sorted. So the first here was the risk assessment, which I had done this prior to. I just wanted to put this in of like, this is why this had to happen. So this was what I had done when I was reaching out to get the solution fixed a few days before launch. And then this was pretty much why we had to do it. So had we not acquired end-to-end control of our relayer source code, there could have been exposure of third-party keys. There could have been a large mint event. That was the largest risk. Introduction of new malicious code. So had we hosted it on our side, which was possible, that we made a Docker image and gave it to him, like he could have just introduced new code at any times, which would have been, again, I trust the guy. I just don't want to have to. Second piece here was the code errors that could result in termination of the bridge service in production, and then there's a bunch of other risks as well. And so I just wanted to add in here that while Geeks Ecosystem has a strong working relationship with the developer who owned the bridge and has no reason to believe malicious intent would be pursued, the mere possibility of the risks presented above were deemed unacceptable, and thus the corrective actions described below were taken. So all of these are just 2-sentence descriptions of what happened. So we acquired the IP on September 2nd, which was roughly 5 days ago, just a little less than 5 days ago. Geeks Ecosystem acquired the IP surrounding 0x Quantum's bridge solution. This acquisition resulted in end-to-end control of all smart contracts and peripheral technology within Geeks Ecosystem. In addition to the acquired IP, complementary IP was developed by Geeks Ecosystem and Automate Cloud to further promote security and reliability. And all of this IP was retained by Geeks Ecosystem. Greg and I then did a full code review. This was about 4 hours. We went through every single contract line by line and concluded that the software was thorough, well-structured, and promoted interoperability within Geeks Ecosystem's multi-chain environment. The acquired code base was confirmed to have no identifiable risks to Geeks Ecosystem or its current/potential investors. And the last one here is an AWS, or one of them here is that we established a secure AWS account with enterprise-level security best practices. And what we did was we ensured that all of our workloads align with the 6 pillars of the AWS well-architected framework. So this account that I have here on AWS can only be accessed by myself. Then we built, this is one of my favorite passages here, which is that we integrated a pipeline for deployment. And so a well-documented deployment pipeline was established to automate, this is why Greg's business is called Automate Cloud, was to automate the delivery of newly updated software into the AWS account and subsequent production environment. This pipeline promotes quick and seamless addition of new tokens and even new blockchains to the pre-existing bridge infrastructure, i.e. the ability to go from idea to production in less than 5 minutes. And so this down here in VS, this here is what allows us to do it. So I've got all of the code that's in here on the side. And then I've got our, we've got our Docker image that we've got that's created. I log into my AWS account. I push all of the stuff through, and it just auto goes right into the cloud. And so that whole thing goes up. The relayer ends up down for about 90 seconds during this process. And then any of the potential transactions that it missed in that 90 seconds, it catches up as soon as it comes back online within a minute or two. So in the, this will happen every time that we need to push a new token or a new chain. And so the outcome is potentially, instead of the transaction going through in a minute, it goes through in 2 to 3 minutes. That's it. Like that's all that it is. And that'll happen, once a week for September. Then the current bridge architecture enables rolling updates of the bridge service, limiting disruptions in the interoperability of our network. And then our current bridge configuration improved cross-chain transaction times by 70%, optimizing user experience within the dApp. And our conclusion here was that we obtained end-to-end control over the bridge architecture, developed additional capabilities to ensure security, reliability, and operational excellence. This effectively mitigates the risks identified in the preliminary assessment and further prepares Geeks Ecosystems for a rollout. This was written by myself, Automate Cloud, and then reviewed by Brennan, and not a single freaking line by ChatGPT, because we're professionals. What we got here? It's definitely the second most of the time for sure. Yeah. Sorry, Rocky, what was that? From what I've seen, it's definitely the second most of the time for sure. Okay, so the bridge website could get potentially taken down. Let me see if Brennan's still on the call here. Yeah, Brennan's still on the call. So our bridge website could get taken down, but the relayer script that's running in the cloud is as secure as it gets. And if the bridge did get taken down, the contracts are verified on chain, and so we could just go to Etherscan, and go that way if folks had needed to. You just add 18 zeros to the end of the amount you want to bridge, punch in the amount. Like, there's no taking it down. There's taking down potentially the website, but if that ever did happen, we just spin it back up. It would take a little bit, and if folks had wanted to, I could just direct them to Etherscan or base scan or BSC scan, and they'd be good to go. Yeah, no problem. Think here. Don't know if this is the call for it. Oh yeah, go for it, Jinx. Or I can just explain arbitrage really simply. So just picture in your head that we're about to launch. Geeks has a half of a cent evaluation on one blockchain, has a half of a cent evaluation on the other blockchain. And it launches, and there's far more volume on BSC. So what happens is that it ends up at 3 cents on BSC, and it ends up at 1 cent on Base. Now, in the event here, arbitrage would be that you buy the token on BSC, you buy the token on Base for a cent. And there's a potential 3x waiting for you if you can just get the tokens over to BSC and then sell over there. That's arbitrage. Is where there is a particular asset that is tradable in multiple environments, and that there's a price difference in those environments. And arbitrage is the act of capitalizing on that price difference. And the bridge enables this, because you could now see how easily you could do that. Correct. So this is how we've, in a way, made a pretty crazy flywheel, because all that you've got to do is look at this and picture that Geeks is getting not just one evaluation. Like Geeks has an evaluation here, but Geeks also has an evaluation here with BNB. Fire has 4 price evaluations. It has an evaluation here with ETH, here with BNB. On Base, it has an evaluation that it's getting from the value of the Geeks token. And on this chain, it has an evaluation that it's getting from the Geeks token as well. 4 price points. DeFi and all subsequent tokens that launch, within our network, that, it's 4 if it decides to launch with Geeks, and 6 if it also launches with the burn mechanism with Fire. So it's DeFi to Fire, DeFi to Geeks, DeFi to ETH, DeFi to BNB, DeFi to Geeks, DeFi to Fire. So when we're talking about on-chain arbitrage, it's this. If we're talking about cross-chain arbitrage, it's this. And the only way to get from here through here is around. Now, what's super cool is that we also, on SushiSwap allows cross-chain swaps. It takes about 90 seconds. So the bridge is super helpful for if you have the asset on the cheaper chain and you want to bridge across to access arbitrage cross-chain. With the bridge fee being 1.5% and the sell tax being 5%, your window of profitability on the arbitrage play is 6.5%. So if the value of the asset on the other chain, especially since there's barely any gas fees, you're looking at about a 6.5 price difference is what the ecosystem will equilibrate to. And any time that it's more than that on either side of the chain, the volume will be generated as that's happening. And so this might be kind of warpy, but take what you're looking at here on the screen and lay it down horizontally. Okay. Now, imagine that the evaluations on the chains are in flux. You've got the blue laying down and you've got the yellow laying down beside it. And then now the blue rises up and the yellow rises down. What's going to happen is that assets are going to spill from the blue down to the yellow, as if folks had wanted to, go and get the cheaper assets, or folks from down below are going to reach up and then sell assets on the higher chain, and then eventually it'll bring them in flux. Now, the important thing is that any time that there is larger than a 6.5% difference between any one of these assets on the other chain, volume. The 2 ways of getting access to that volume is that if you have on the lower chain, you have the asset and you want to go to the higher chain, you have to go through the bridge. If you are on the higher chain and you want to get access to it, you aren't going to bridge across and then sell for cheaper. What you're going to do is you're going to sell on chain and then you're going to go to the swap and then you can buy cross swap. So I can go from BNB to a base pool in 90 seconds, or I can go from a base to a BNB pool in 90 seconds. It goes either way through the SushiSwap. And that's why we have our pools over on the SushiSwap, because it'll buy into the token on the other side, and then it'll make the swaps over. So I don't know if that's a little too tricky to map out in your head, but it gets even crazier once you start imagining 4 blockchains, 6 blockchains, 10 blockchains, and this happening, or 4 blockchains with 10 tokens, 15 tokens per chain, and then the volume that's ripping through it, going to the pops through the bridge, is going to the rabbits, all of whatever's happening is going to the beavers. The tangs are minting tokens to buy in. It becomes a pretty wild trading environment. Yeah. Yeah. So this here of the like so many trades will be made. Like that's the point. That's the point. You know? And so the DEX is designed that you'll then be able to trade like on any chain, you know? And so the also the goal there is that if you're doing a lot of volume, like you can imagine if you're trading hundreds of thousands of dollars in volume and you're paying the fees on it, that that would eat up a lot, right? So it'll make sense for us to offer kind of like a subscription model to lower fees, and then that'll give the ecosystem kind of like a stable revenue supply as folks are now trading with less fees, you know. So we could drop them from a 5% sell tax to a 2% sell tax across all of the assets, you know. And then now we've got that built in right into the contract there, and then you can imagine a DEX where instead of trading on Uniswap, we're trading on something, you know, that you pull up on your PC or on your phone, and now you've got all of the peer-reviewed assets on any blockchain. You've got the Shilitary DApp built into it. You've got the Bridge DApp built into it. You've got the NFTs that are built right into it. You've got the game, if you had wanted to play the Hippo Harem, that's built right into it. And then that DApp is now all that it needs is some documentation built on the front end. And now you have what is, in my opinion, you know, this social fi / like on-ramp tool, you know, that you could use for, you know, getting new folks into DeFi, you know. Like explain to them this fun trading game, you know, explain to them that like your money is never just going to disappear in an instant, you know, within this network, you know, here's the ways that you could play it. Here's the things that you're going to be looking for, and we can tailor it that you can build an environment for going through your own trading loop, you know, whatever else you want, you know. And then this is also still without getting into the stuff like the Stakehouse where we're building developer tools for everybody else in the space as well. So yeah. So yeah, that's about 2 hours. I don't know. I mean, I could talk about this all day. I don't know if anybody has any specific questions about any one thing. I feel like over time, you know, it's one of those things that's just going to take time, and you know, seeing it and understanding how it's going to be playing out is going to be where it's at. So I'll pop off my screen share here. So yeah, any questions? I know that was a lot. Nice. All right, have a good snooze. Sir Trust, thanks for sitting in on this. Hope that was insightful. Nice. Welcome. We're just sitting in the aftermath of a 2-hour VC, just letting everything just marinate in people's brains. Yeah, I really don't know if I had anything when Twitter Space. Yeah, I gotta get the Twitter populated. Like, if there's anybody here that's like, how ever wondering like how early are you to this? Like, our Twitter doesn't even have 100 followers yet. So if that, like, we're starting at $1 million market cap with less than 100 followers on the Twitter. Ugh. Okay, well, I'll turn off the recording, the minimum here. We can just hang out if there's anybody got anything. Stop recording.